Station. We are live here in the WTIM information station to do our first interview of the day. I am joined today by Dr. Ken Redfield, and our live stream is brought to you by People's Bank and Trust. Ken, do we have you on the air? Beautiful. It's so good to have you here. Can you speak one more time for us so our listeners can hear you well? One more time.
Yeah, no, but good to be here talking about politics in Central Illinois.
Beautiful. We have you here. You sound great, Mr. Dr. Kent Redfield. Super good to have you on. I haven't talked to you yet in my time here, but so much to talk about here today. We got a little bit of information on you as a professor emeritus with the University of Illinois Springfield, political science savant in his own right, and a long time working in state politics. And I want to learn everything that there is to know about the assault weapons ban and everything else here today, Kent.
No, happy to be here and talk about these things.
Absolutely. So can you get us started? If I really am brand new to this, what is the first things I need to know about the complicated Illinois assault weapons ban?
Well, the state has passed a law that essentially bans the sale and ownership of assault weapons going forward. And if you own an assault weapon, you have to register it, and so that's been challenged in both state court and federal court. And so that makes it, a little harder to track because there are issues involving the Illinois state constitution in terms of how the legislature passed it, questions of due process. But we have a different kind of Second Amendment right to bear arms language in the state constitution. The federal constitution has different language, and we have a different Supreme Court that has ruled in a case in New York striking down some restrictions on concealed carry that they intend to look at legislation to try and regulate guns in a much stricter, more, I would say, pro-gun friendly kind of an approach. And so those two things are, you've got two different tracks. The Illinois case has been argued, and the state Supreme Court could issue a ruling sometime probably this fall. The federal case, you got a bunch of cases working up from different states. That might take a couple of years to get there.
Without a doubt, this is a fully loaded thing that we have going here. You mentioned that states have their own constitutions. You forget about that a lot. And so I'm sure that has a lot to do with different states and their decision on what to make here. Does Illinois' Second Amendment have different provisions that makes it easier to accomplish here in Illinois?
It is, it doesn't have the kind of historical context that the Supreme Court is using in terms of saying this is what the founding fathers meant, and in terms of how it should be interpreted. Illinois' Constitution, its current Constitution, was enacted in 1970. So you can go and look at the proceedings of that convention. Some of the people that were at the constitutional, but that con in Illinois are still alive, obviously, and so it is also, obviously, with a Democratic controlled legislature and a Democratic governor, then you're going to, you've gotten, in this case, an assault weapons ban that you certainly wouldn't get in Texas or Florida. But the larger question ultimately will not be what the state, what the state Supreme Court says. It will be the U.S. Supreme Court setting a national standard, and so I think if the law would be invalidated, it almost certainly would come from through the federal courts, through the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, so that would have to come from a more federal level, and on the state level, it's pretty concrete, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think we've had the way we've dealt with guns. Now we were very slow to get concealed carry, but when and that was done in response to a federal decision, essentially saying that the right to bear arms was an individual right. It was clear that not having any kind of not allowing concealed carry at all would not pass federal muster, and so you got a bill through the legislature that was a compromise between the Democrats and Republicans, but not allowing concealed carry was not an option because any kind of ban on concealed carry, total ban, would have been struck down by the federal court. So this is it's in lots of areas of law. There's ultimately there's a supremacy clause in the federal Constitution, and so federal law and Supreme Court rulings are going to trump state law and state court rulings.
Okay. Can you talk about a little bit about the different positions? What people are saying about this, the reactions and then thoughts that people can take away?
Well, a lot of it. I mean, some of it is just you think of it in terms of people that either are very strong First Amendment, Second Amendment, they don't want any restrictions, or people that believe that we need, in light of all of the gun violence, mass shootings, that we need to have controls. Those positions play out regionally in Illinois. So Chicago, suburban Cook, a number of communities in the northeastern suburbs, I'd actually adopted assault weapons ban through home rule, through municipal action back when we did concealed carry. When you get outside of, the northeast suburbs, northeastern Illinois, then you get an almost 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And so you have very strong First Amendment, Second Amendment proponents. And so it's very regional. It's very regional, so it's Democrat and Republican a little bit, but it's also, downstate Illinois, versus the suburbs in the city of Chicago also.
All right, very cool. I'm looking at some of the cases that are in court right now. There are cases, people rallying against. Is that correct? Are people rallying against these notions and then people fighting for them in different parts of Illinois?
Right. And so everything in the state level got consolidated. You can file, up until this year, you could file a challenge of law in any district, judicial district in Illinois. Those all got consolidated into one case. There was a ruling out of Effingham that was ruled against the new law. The state constitution says, if a law is challenged and a lower court says it's unconstitutional at a trial court level, you can appeal that immediately to the state Supreme Court. Normally, you would have to go through an appellate level and then get to the state Supreme Court. But the Attorney General, appealed the adverse ruling, the ruling that the law should be suspended because they thought that you would get it would be overturned at the trial court level. But so now it's up at the federal. It's when you got through that process, then it's now at the state Supreme Court level, and that's you argued that early in the spring, so we really are waiting on a decision. At the federal level, we really haven't gotten beyond, in Illinois, just what injunctions or courts saying that you not issuing injunctions against the law. You really even haven't had a federal, trial level case decided in Illinois yet.
Wow. Okay. This has all been really great information. I'm sitting here with Dr. Kent Redfield, a political science professor emeritus, and we are here about to take our first break of our 8:40 WTIM morning show. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Back here on the WTIM information station, I am Tim Zalabak, bringing you your Monday morning or Tuesday morning, WTIM morning show brought to you by People's Bank and Trust. I'm now sitting down with Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Illinois Springfield. We talked the Illinois state assault weapon ban earlier in this. Now we're going to move on a little bit. Kent, do we still got you on the phone here?
Yes, certainly.
Beautiful. We still have you here. That is Kent Redfield out of the University of Illinois Springfield. Now, let's talk a little bit about a 17% raise for lawmakers here in Illinois. And it seems that they were not expected to get another raise. Can you explain a little bit about this?
Well, the Constitution says you can't lower or raise an elected official's salary during the term of office. So the county board can't come in or the legislature can't decide, they don't like what coroners are doing. So they're going to cut every coroner's salary in half, in the middle of their term. You just can't do that. But the legislature couldn't come in and say, we're working really hard, so we think we deserve a 50% pay increase. You can't do that while, during your term in office. So what happens is there's a short period between the 1st of January and, in this case, the 9th of January, where you only need a simple majority for the old legislature to pass legislation. And so the old legislature came in, hurriedly, passed increases for legislators. It got signed into law. And then because it was signed into law actually the morning before the governor was sworn in to his new term, then that was all legal. And, it is legal, but, most, the people that object to kind of this being done in a hurry think, why don't you, sit down and do it, during the regular session, set the new salary before you have to file, papers for, petitions for running for office. So there's always grumbling about how it's done. This year, usually then it's over. But this year there was a cost of living increase, which was a big jump. So they went from 72 to 85,000 per year. Then they were going to get another 5,000 through cost of living, but the cost of living was 5.5%. It's just a formula that comes off a federal index. The law itself actually says it can't be more than 5%. So the governor had to go in and do a reduction veto on the appropriation for the part of the salary that came from the cost of living because there was too much money in there. And so if you just got the issue front and center, and people that were upset about it then could raise questions again. The larger question is almost $90,000. Is that a lot of money? Too much money? Not enough money. And, you can either say, well, these people are doing a lousy job and I don't make that kind of money. Or you can say, well, these people are making decisions about a $50 billion budget and passing laws about, and we just talked about assault weapons and funding schools. This is really important. We ought to pay enough money to get good people there. So this is not going to be resolved anytime soon. But so that's basically how how this got back in the papers during the end of the budget session.
So you did mention everything that happened there was legal. It was a little bit sneaky, it seems. Is there any trust lost, do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, insofar when people feel like their things are, they're not being informed, not being done on the up and up. Those kinds of things, they do reduce people's support for government, the legitimacy of the process. And given Illinois' long history with corruption, all of its various, fights. I mean, we had the Governor Rauner who was in town for signing his official portrait. He presided over a 2-year stalemate where we didn't have a budget and we were running up the unpaid bills and everything else. So, we're not starting from a position where everybody thinks the legislature's doing a great job and Illinois politics is fine. There's a real trust issue because of how much corruption we've had and how badly we've mismanaged government at times. And so, there's not a lot of goodwill there that you can draw on when trying to make the case that, you really need to pay legislators more so you can get better people.
Awesome. Really interesting. We have about 1 minute left, Kent. Can you leave us with some final thoughts here?
Well, I think this is, this is important to keep, to people to keep up and to make an effort in terms of knowing what's going on, because, ultimately everybody has a state legislator, everybody has a city council member, everybody has a mayor, and, the political system doesn't work unless people participate. It's sometimes it's hard, to you say, why am I doing this? But ultimately, if the people have to be responsible, and it's about consent of the governed, which is the language the U.S. Constitution uses. So you're giving consent either by silence or by participation. So you need to be informed and be engaged.
That's a really good way of putting it. You are involved no matter what, and your silence, it could be aggression at some point. Your ignorance could be seen as something as faulty. Correct. So thank you so much,
Yep.
Dr. Kent Redfield. That's Dr. Kent Redfield, an emeritus professor out of the University of Illinois Springfield, sat down with us today to talk about Illinois assault weapons ban, the lawmakers' pay increase, and all of the lowdown knowledge that we need to know if we're not informed. So thank you so much, Dr. Kent, for coming on.
No, good to be here.
Absolutely. You're listening to the WTIM information station. This is Tim Zalabak reporting. We will be back here in just a little bit with more on the way. Thank you for listening.